Hello everyone, welcome to my book channel. I'm Zenlu and today I'm putting together my November TBR. So in November I've decided to read all new releases. So everything that I'm about to show you are books that are released in 2025, including some fantasy, horror, manga, and literary fictions. Some of these I have been looking forward to since last year when the release had been announced. So I'm very excited for this month reading. Let's get started with the first book, which is Katabasis. You probably already recognize the overspray from the thumbnail. It's just that this overspray design is so iconic and recognizable that every time this is in someone's book stack, when they're showing it like this, I'm like, yeah, that's Katabasis. So I did buy this book as soon as it released. And then I read a little bit into it. You can see all the tasks. I haven't finished it. And I just feel like I needed to take a little bit more time with this book because there's a lot of research that clearly went into writing this book. And the author included a lot of lore and mythology about hell and the underworld. Some of these are from Greek mythology. Others are from Dante's Inferno. And there are also a lot of tidbits that are from other languages than other cultures. I recognized a few sort of underworld afterlife mythology from China and Chinese as well. So I did want to spend more time enjoying it and looking into all of the things that I'm interested in. But also I do feel like I need to finish it because I read 7 or 8 chapters and then set it aside. It's been a while. I already feel like I need to restart from the beginning. So I don't want to just set it aside for too long and then have it end up being a DNF. So yeah, I do want to finish reading Katabasis. The next book is Blood for the Undying Throne. So this is the sequel to Blood of the Old Kings, and I had been looking forward to this sequel as soon as before I even finished reading the first installment in this series. So this is an amazing fantasy world written by Korean author Sun-il Kim, and it features an empire that uses the dead bodies of sorcerers as power generators. And these sorcerers, once they die, their bodies are wrapped in chains, and they power the empire's war machines that are used to suppress the individual kingdoms that kind of want their own freedom and they want to break away from the empire's oppression and rule. In the first book, there are 3 main characters. Lauren, who teaches sword fighting, and she made a pact with a 7-eyed dragon to help her avenge her family. And Cain, who grew up on the street and is kind of trying to make a living however he can, and he was investigating the death of his friend called Vienna. And then there's Ariane, who is a young sorcery student, and she was not kind of the most talented student in her school, and she's always been told that her sole purpose is just to become a power generator after she died. However, she started hearing the voice of a dead sorcerer in her mind, and that connection unleashes a whole host of mystery and drama and conflict to follow. The first book was very exciting if you like dragons, if you like swords, if you like war machines that have kind of a steampunk design, but in a fantasy setting, then you would love this series. And I actually just started rereading the first book to get ready for the second one so I can have that like seamless continuity between the 2 narratives. And I will definitely have a video dedicated to this series, so stay tuned for that one. Next is another brand new release. This is Red City by Marie Lu. I did place a pre-order for this book and I think I received it near the end of October, so it's brand new. So Marie Lu is more known for a kind of YA fantasy author. So she's probably most well known for the Legend series, which I read a long time ago and really enjoyed it. And because I really liked it, I also read her duology. I think it's inspired by Attack on Titan. They're called Sky Hunter and Steel Striker, which are also super exciting. So I think this is her first like adult fantasy series that's not really YA. So I'm really curious to see what kind of fantasy world she has created, and I'm definitely looking forward to this one. The next one is another Junji Ito collection called The Liminal Zone. So this volume was actually released in 2021, but the sequel was released in 2025. And I am looking forward to getting my hands on that one as well. So I'm counting it in the new release TBR. I'm beyond excited. I'm a big fan of Junji Ito. I think his horror concepts are always really unique. And a lot of the times he's capable of taking like a very everyday concept and really escalate it to a very horrifying, terrifying kind of horror concept. I remember when I was reading Shiver, there was one story that kind of just started with the idea of cooking oil that's being used in like a barbecue restaurant, and it ended up in this like absolutely haunting body horror that still kind of gives me goosebumps when I think about it. And in this collection, there is a story that's about Aokigahara, which is the sometimes called suicide forest in Japan. There's a lot of myth and urban legends surrounding this place, but there are also like a lot of real cases that were discovered in that forest. So I'm really curious to see what Junji Ito's take on it is. And I'm already planning on picking up the 2025 sequel to this collection. The next one is another pre-order that I had been anticipating ever since the release was announced. This is What We Can Know by McEwan. So this is a science fiction written by an author that's more known for literary fictions. He is the author of Atonement. If you've seen that film featuring Keira Knightley and I think it's James McAvoy with that like famous green dress, that story was written by Ian McEwan, and he's also a Booker Prize winner, so a very renowned author in Britain. And I'm curious to see how a literary fiction author writes science fiction. So in this story, I think it began with a poem that was written in 2014 and became lost. And then 100 years later, when the world was devastated by, I think, a nuclear disaster or a climate disaster, something like that, this poem was found and people started speculating about the meaning behind it and kind of trying to make sense of this post-apocalyptic reality. It sounds like an interesting story, and I really like Ian McEwan's writing style, so I think this will be an interesting read. The next book is kind of a continuation of spooky season and transitioning into winter. I mentioned this book in my end of the year book tag. So this is The Manor of Dreams by Christina Lee. Based on the synopsis, I think this is a haunted house horror story. So in this story, the first Chinese actress to win an Oscar had disappeared, and her family and another family that was apparently in her will were fighting for the rights to her manor, and both families ended up moving into this house, and they started experiencing like unexplained phenomenons and things go bump in the night. So all of the haunted house trappings that you would expect in a horror story. And this story is also supposed to be multi-generational. So I do wonder if it's like a horror premise, but it also has certain elements of literary fiction. So I'm really curious to see what the story is here. The next book is also one of my end of the year autumn to winter kind of transitional books. This is Breath of the Dragon by Shannon Lee and Fonda Lee. So I've heard of Fonda Lee from the Jade City series. I think it's called the Greenbone Saga series, where the first installment is called Jade City and followed by Jade War and Jade Legacy. So I have purchased Jade City, but I haven't like made the leap to take on a whole fantasy series yet, and decided to read the standalone first. So I think this story is inspired by Bruce Lee and his like martial arts capabilities, but it also contains fantasy elements. So Shannon Lee is Bruce Lee's daughter, so I'm expecting this book to kind of represent his legacy really well. And it's also like a under 350 page fantasy. Like standalones like that are really hard to find. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to this one. The next book is also one of the ones that I listed as books that I want to read before the end of the year. This is One Day Everyone Will Have Always Been Against This by Omar Akkad. So this is probably one of the most buzzed nonfiction published in 2025, along with Everything is Tuberculosis that I had already reviewed. I will link that video below. So this is a nonfiction that's about the conflict in Gaza and I think Western apathy. And this book originated from a tweet that an author had put out actually in 2023. He wrote, "One day when it's safe, when there's no personal downside to calling a thing what it is, when it's too late to hold anyone accountable, everyone will have always been against this." And this tweet had been viewed more than 10 million times. So I'm really interested to see what the author's insight on this region and this issue is. The next book is also one that I have been anticipating ever since the release was announced because I love this author's first book so much. This is The Emperor of Gladness by Vuong. So I loved On Earth We're Briefly Gorgeous, and I think this author has become like an instant buy author for me. So his writing style is very poetic, but he's also a great storyteller that really puts the reader in the scene of the events that he describes. And he also combines a lot of like philosophical observations and reflections into his writing. So I'm expecting something similar in this book. This one is set in Connecticut, and it is the story between a 19-year-old kid who was contemplating ending his life and an elderly widow who was succumbing to dementia and convinced him to take another path. So this will be a story of a very interesting companionship, and I'm expecting it to be heartwarming, insightful, and just a joy to read. The last one, I have to admit, I bought because of the hype. I actually know very little about this book or this author. This is Death of the Author by Nnedi Okorafor. So I've seen quite a few book reviewers that I follow mention this book in their like TBRs or reading wrap-ups, and I became really curious about it. And I found a secondhand copy, and I also fell for this gorgeous overspray. I think overspray is just kind of like a trap for me. It's just kind of irresistible. I don't know what it is about it. I'm just always drawn to beautiful colors. So based on the synopsis, it looks like this book is about a disabled author who felt like her life was upended when she went to her sister's lavish Caribbean wedding. So she was fired from her job, and her latest book was rejected by yet another publisher. She felt like her career and her dreams were both crushed, so she decided to write something just for herself, which was a far future epic where androids and AI wage war in the grown-over ruins of human civilization, and she calls it Rusted Robots. So that sounds like a really interesting premise. I'm curious if this author would do something similar to The Blind Assassin by Margaret Atwood, where there would be like chapters that are selections from this fictional book that doesn't really exist, and it only exists in that fictional universe, if that makes sense. So I'm hoping this book will be a combination of like imaginative sci-fi elements and also the more thought-provoking and in-depth character work of literary fiction. So really looking forward to this one. So those are all the books that I'm planning to read in November. They're all hot off the press, brand new releases. A lot of these I have been looking forward to for a long time, and some of these I have read other works from the author and really enjoyed it, so I have a lot of confidence in the ability of the author. Overall, I'm really excited. I'm really looking forward to this selection. Please let me know in the comments below what you thought of the books that I've chosen for November, and definitely let me know what you plan on reading this month. Thank you so much for watching. See you next time.